everybody. This is Danny and Karl with Get Wisdom, and today we're going to continue with the channeling series. And today we have a very interesting channeling subject. Karl is going to channel an Anunnaki in the light. And so we're going to have a little discussion about this first. We had to do, there's some setup stuff that might be a little bit interesting in preparation for this particular channeling. We've never done this before. We've done other ETs before. We've done 2 sessions with the Reptilian in the light, and recently we did Arcturian in the light. But now we're going to, I guess, the top of the pyramid here, the Anunnaki species, which is part of the negative alien cohort that's running things on the planet. So thanks everybody for joining us, and thank you, Karl. And maybe you can set the scene here a little bit for this channeling.
Okay, well, this is breaking new ground for sure, and it's an attempt to get an insider's look at the thinking of that group, that species, and their culture, particularly as it pertains to us, how they view us and interact with us, because they've been doing this since almost the very beginning of the advent of human beings in creation. The Anunnaki race was founded nearly 5 billion years ago. And the modern human has been around only 125,000 years or so. So there's a tremendous contrast there. And this is an old world civilization that have mastered much of their domain. They are star travelers. They travel throughout our galaxy. They have conquered and dominated other worlds. And they're in charge of the world right now from behind the scenes. You know, people talk about a hidden cabal,
right?
A secret government and all that sort of thing. You know, that is what is at the root of it. It is that there's an extraterrestrial alliance that's headed by the Anunnaki, who let 2 other species of extraterrestrials in on the game, and they're in partnership now to control things. So they have designs on us and an agenda, and it's been a long haul being suppressed by them and manipulated and exploited at turns. And it's been a very sad epic, because it's been always with a loveless oversight and an oppression. So the earth is really like a giant internment camp. And one of our channeling subjects was saying recently that we're all like animals on leashes. We have the illusion of freedom, but all we get to do is decide how to roam around our cage, and we don't realize we're in a cage.
Yeah.
And we're being constrained and manipulated all the time with mind control and on and on. So this is big. There's no bigger story anywhere than this one. And all of the religions have been designed to help countermand that dark intrusion in our realm. And that's been the purpose. And this is one of the first things I learned from the light. The Bible is a whistleblowing document about extraterrestrial and fallen angelic spirits as interlopers in our world. And that's the scourge that we're facing and where evil comes from.
Yeah.
So to be able to talk to one of these people, one of the members of this race, will be very interesting.
So why would an Anunnaki want to even talk to us in this scenario? I mean, what if they're on the bad side of the equation here? Why would they want to help us or give us information?
The thing to understand about what we're doing is we're going to the light. We're going to the heavenly realms, the higher astral plane, to speak with an Anunnaki who is in between lifetimes. And when they're in between lifetimes, they go back to God. They go back to the higher astral, and spend some time as a light being and are close to the divine and are reminded of their true origin and look back and see all that's been going on during their life and the previous eras and so forth that they learn about as they're growing up. And they see that it's a giant mess where things have gotten off track because of corruption. They were corrupted way, way, way before humanity and before the earth was probably even formed by the fallen angelics. And it really has brought them to the brink of their demise because they are so disconnected from the Almighty that there's almost no hope left for them to find their way back again. They are so depraved. They're functional psychopaths in the physical. So we're not talking to an Anunnaki from the enemy camp, the boots on the ground kind of thing. We're talking to an in-between period when they get their senses back, when they get their perspective back and see the big picture and look on in horror. And it's true for us. When we go up to the light and we look back down on the earth, we're just shocked because as a light being, you can't conceive of harming someone else. And then you look at all the things that are going on in the world with people exploiting one another and trying to cheat one another and get away with things and that all the frictions and tensions and the global elbowing for power and control and all that. So that's all a function of corruption and the evil of the darkness coming in. So we're expecting to get a loftier look.
So when an Anunnaki reincarnates, do they forget their light being in existence like humans do?
That's correct.
They forget it. So it's like even though they have psychic abilities and they can look into the areas where humans are disconnected, they're still unable to figure out that creator connection that they had or once had through the reincarnation cycles. They actually have like a mind wipe, and they go into that culture, and they have to like disavow the existence of the divine realm. Is that the right way to think of this?
Well, by being disconnected, they're unable to perceive it. They're unable to interact with it, to sense its existence, and to get communications from the divine in a way that they recognize. For us, it's quite subtle. We are impaired as well as functional human beings. Our connection to the divine realm is attenuated. It's been dimmed down and dumbed down through a manipulation.
Their manipulation of humans.
Yes.
The Anunnakis did that.
That's right.
It's a genetic manipulation.
That's right.
Yeah.
So they appreciate the power of intuition to sense and know things. And they see that we have these capabilities, and they engineered genetic modification of humanity at the very, very beginning when they first arrived here to hobble us and make us more subservient and less a threat to them, because then we weren't able to kind of sense more about what's going on, and we only can understand what we see in front of us and so on. And that's the mode we're still in. There are some among us with more reach than others, the psychics, and they're blessed with greater ability to sense things. But the Anunnaki do not use their own intuitive reach in a way that serves them. They have turned away from belief in any kind of higher power long, long, long ago, much in the same way we are doing it now with the secular movement. You see, it's not so mysterious. If you know God is real and you're part of God, why would you ever give that up?
Right.
Well, the problem is through disconnection and disuse and not practicing an engagement with the higher realms. So you get a sense of something out there that's real and you get feedback and so on. So seeing is believing. And they've been cut off and ignoring it for so long. They just don't go there. They don't believe in it. They're atheists, totally atheists. They know that we're believers, and they try to squelch our belief because they know it serves to bring us together. It unifies us, and that creates a danger for them because they know when people get together and they tune their minds in on a same wavelength and with a similar intention, mysterious things can happen. They don't know how, they don't know why, because they don't believe it's God. You see, but that's what happens when
so they have a mechanistic view of that.
Yeah, their knowledge base is incomplete, and they're telepathic, but it's a more prosaic kind of paranormal ability than intuition. It's more local and orderly and single-minded and directed in its intention.
It's interesting, and I'm glad you explained this, because there, in the whole disclosure movement and a lot of the belief systems around ET civilizations, is that there's this intractable belief that if an ET race is advanced, there's a concurrent spiritual advancement as well. So their whole moral standing is upgraded. It goes in. It's kind of like commensurate with their technical abilities. So if they can time travel, and if they can use telepathy, and they can have power over matter, and they have free energy, well, it only stands to reason that they're also benevolent, and they're uplifting, and they're going to solve other problems. There's this idea that those two things are somehow tied to each other. And what you're explaining is that they're not tied together. In fact, it's just the opposite.
It is the opposite. It's the glorification of materialism versus the spiritual realities of existence. That the universe is a love-based region created by a loving consciousness that wants all to share in the giving and receiving of love, in a benefit to its growth and expansion and enriching environments that add variety and limitless possibilities. And it's done to exalt everyone and raise everyone up. That's the intention.
Yeah.
But when you have a materialist view that says there's nothing beyond the brain, and you're just matter that happened to come up and show up here, and you get your innings for a time, and then you just go back to dust, then there's no reason necessarily to be altruistic. People still have that tendency because it's part of who they are. They're still spiritual beings. They can't help it.
Yeah.
But it's not worshipped. It's not felt to be a tremendous blessing, and it's not the priority ever. It's not the focus.
Right.
So people kind of pay lip service. But what that means is they just want everyone around them to be nice. They don't want to have to do any work to get that. They just want people to be good people, and somehow that's just going to happen because it works and helps grease the gears of society and so on, which is true. And there's nothing wrong with a golden rule and
but it only gets you so far.
Well, that's true. When things are under pressure and there are crises and there is a competition for resources because of physical circumstances and so forth, that's the acid test. And what happens then, and how are you going to handle it? And so the Anunnaki civilization was blessed with tremendous gifts, intelligence, creativity, and telepathic abilities. And their ingenuity has enabled them to advance scientifically to a tremendous degree.
Right. Plus they got 2 rows of teeth and 6 fingers.
Well, they've got parts to spare. So they've figured out a lot about the DNA control of things. And they are at a point now where if they need a new organ, they can create a new organ. They can regenerate all their organs.
Yeah.
And as a result of their ability to stay on top of degradation of the body, they can live up to 1,000,000 years. That's a long, long time.
Yes, it is.
Compared to what humans get to enjoy. And it's because of their technologies. And they've mastered interstellar travel. They've mastered travel through time, which has many advantages and adds new dimensions in terms of what they can do. But it's nothing more than a kind of a glorified world that we know of. I'm sure they have better cell phones. And,
Well, yeah. I mean, if you think about it, the allure of this is almost overwhelming. I mean, if you just talk to someone who's kind of like into the disclosure movement, the notions that go along with just the free energy concept is so stunning, and the ramifications of that are just, they're very compelling. It's a very romantic and sweet argument. It's one that's hard to refute. It's hard to stand up against, and that's kind of like what's taken over. And if you look at the field of research around UFOs and whatnot, there's a few descriptions out there that kind of match what you're describing, but they're definitely in the minority.
Yeah. So, well, see, this is the thing. When you have a world that kind of runs itself because you've streamlined it so technologically, and you can get free energy from the quantum field and put that to use, then what are you going to do with your time? And people tend to be indolent and slovenly and
well, usually what usually bubbles up is entertainment.
Well, yes, and it's often entertainment that isn't uplifting. It's kind of coarse and demeaning, and with limited perspective and insight about larger issues and perspectives. So without a spiritual focus and a spiritual core, things become pointless very quickly. Because then it's all about who do you know, who are you in the hierarchy, how much stuff do you have, and who have you bested in some way or another, and how much power do you have, who do you control, and
it's interesting because if you look even in the human history, if you look at the rise and fall of civilizations, one of the signposts before a civilization self-destructs is the entertainment becomes the huge focal point of the average person's life. More and more of their time is devoted to entertainment, and that's usually like one of the last things you see before the civilization breaks down, and then there's a rebuilding cycle. So if you ever look at that, I mean, I would agree with the idea that kind of thing has been managed by the ETs, but in terms of great huge civilizations, the Roman Empire being probably the poster boy for all of this discussion. The rise of the Roman Empire, and then what happened right before the Roman Empire disintegrated? Well, it was breads and circuses. Everybody's inordinately consumed, and their whole days are filled up with like how can I be entertained? And then that was the beginning of the end for the Romans. And if you look at the other civilizations, you see the similar pattern. So yeah, this is gonna be interesting. We have 6 questions for this particular fellow. Now, Karl, before we start, could you just briefly explain to our audience what did you have to do to set this up? Because we don't have a name. It's not like we're going to go out and interview James Forrestal or something. We know that there was such a person. How is this Anunnaki identified and made available to us through your channeling?
This was an individual who volunteered, and that was brokered through Creator to set this up, to have a spokesperson who would understand the big picture. During the time they're in the light, the Anunnaki are very concerned about their future and what's to become of them.
Right.
Because they see how very far beyond the pale their culture has become. And they know it can't go on forever like that. And so this person will be very sympathetic to the cause of saving all of the parties involved. And we've been told for some time that is the best way we can survive, by raising up our perpetrator, by healing the perpetrator as a top priority, because then our problems go away. If we can heal them, then our problems are solved, because they could annihilate us anytime they choose. And they're working towards it right now to have everything in place to do it.
And the reason they don't do it just right now is, my understanding is that they prefer to do it. Well, they're in a cohort with two other races. One of them having made the Arcturians, making the Greys, which are using us like lab rats for their own DNA experimentation. So that's one fly in the ointment for just ending things right now. And the other thing is, correct me if I'm wrong, is that they would prefer to end it by using us as the main worker bees to contribute to the suicide of the entire race, so to speak.
Yes.
Is that
That's
how
right.
you? All right.
Yeah.
Otherwise, so they would just do it.
Right.
And they could.
And they could, because they've done it before.
Yeah.
We're the second iteration of humans. And the first cohort was destroyed by them. So the game they've been involved with, you speak of entertainment, this has all been for their entertainment, their interaction with us. They use us as pawns on a game board and manipulate us, getting us to do things and create things and get involved in things.
Geopolitics, nation against nations, wars, famine, political intrigue, all of that.
All of that. And it's like a giant soap opera that they write the script for. And we happen to be the characters. And then they watch us to see how it turns out and laugh at us and enjoy our plight and enjoy our suffering. And this is what we mean by psychopathic, that these are beings that are loveless. They're incapable of feeling love. And so they have no ability to feel compassion for the suffering of humanity. And in fact, it's the opposite. They enjoy it. So this is like the little kid who pulls the wings off flies and, burns the ants with a spyglass and laughs and not just as to see that they can do it and see it happen once, but over and over and over again, and it's hard to conceive of someone enjoying the plight of another being, even of another species. But that's what they do, and what they've been reduced to. So this is why there's urgency here as well.
Right.
That we have to find a path to raise them up, and the better we understand them, I think the better it comes into focus for people.
Right. Especially with respect to the healing. And so this being, this Anunnaki in the light that we're going to be interviewing today, is going to probably feel the same urgency for the sake of their own race.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's sort of like, we have our own cultural icons of explorers or conquerors, whatever you want to call them, who have gone across the globe on expeditions and ended up decimating groups of indigenous people. And it's written off to the price of progress, and one has to, the powerful subjugate the weak, and it's kind of been accepted through the centuries. It's the spoils of
Right.
the conqueror and all that. But
Right.
that's this extraterrestrial mentality again.
Yeah.
They have imposed that on us, and it lives through today. And we're seeing it more and more at every level of society, especially as we give up religion.
Yeah.
It's growing in parts of the world. It's shrinking here in America.
Yeah.
And
And
in the
actually, we've
West.
been taught that religion was a causal factor for the decimation of indigenous cultures, which is
Yeah.
partly true due to the corruption of those religions, but not entirely true. It's not the whole story.
No, not at all. And that's really a disinformation. And the reality is every human institution is corrupted. You can't trust anyone at any level of authority because they're all being manipulated. So you can't blame humans for this, even though it's humans who are doing it.
Yeah.
But that's the game, you see, that
Yeah.
you're the chess piece
Right.
on that game board, and you're being maneuvered into position to go off as a young recruit to go to war and fight or take part in some policing action somewhere that embroils your nation in a heartache and so on. And this just goes on and on and on and on. And it's not coming from human inspiration at all.
Okay.
It's
Well,
it's the ideas of the extraterrestrials.
okay. So we have 6 questions for this individual, and the time's burning up here rather rapidly. But I think this was necessary to kind of set the stage here, because this is kind of a new arena, even for the channeling series. You know, we've done only just a very small handful of these ETs as subjects. So I think it was good we spent this time to set the stage here, especially for someone who's not encountered any of these videos yet. So with that, let's go ahead and get started.
All right, I'll just take a moment to get in the state of consciousness needed. I connect through Creator with the channeling subjects and ask to have the connection protected from outside listening and interference. That's very important for security and safety. And it is a failing of most channelers to not use such precautions or use them effectively. And they end up talking to an imposter. And then they're fed back religious precepts that are high sounding and reassuring and uplifting and all that, which is fine, but much limits on the true inner workings of things, and no solutions to problems really.
Yeah.
That will actually work, at least. So that's the difference, and that's the problem, in that the world is completely manipulated at all levels. Even the disclosure movement, the New Age movement, and so on. It's a real difficulty to know who is genuine, who is not. So I'll just take a moment, and then we'll hear from our new friend.
Okay.
This is your Anunnaki spokesperson.
Thank you for joining us. We have learned much from Creator about the Anunnaki. We know you belong to an ancient civilization 5 billion years old and have mastered the physical sciences about as much as anyone in your spiritual dilemma can. But with lifespans up to 1 million years and an Orwellian societal structure with little mobility, is it fair to say that you are like a ghost stuck in a room that doesn't know how to get out, only it's a much bigger room?
This is a fair analogy, although a bit esoteric, and many people will not completely understand the nature of the question. What you're speaking of is limits in perspective, that the ghost being has lost its bearings and its link to the physical, but not yet ascended to higher realms where it normally would journey. and can be floundering in total darkness or within an environment of energetic perceptions that it doesn't understand and makes little sense, but nonetheless constitutes a barrier to free movement in some way or another. And unbeknownst to that spirit, might be a small part of human dwelling and is not perceived that way by the spirit, and essentially lives a life and an existence in isolation and within a cage. The cage is its limited perception and the constraints on the movement and energy through ignorance, a disconnection from prior knowing and awareness of how to navigate. In our case, our civilization has lost its moorings spiritually. And instead of working towards the ultimate divine expansion that was a previous intention of Creator in making us in the first instance, we were brought down by being contaminated with dark spirit attachments. And this eroded our ability to communicate with the higher realms and has lowered our sights more and more and more and more. We long ago lost the ability to love. The love energy comes from the divine. It is not manufactured within the mind or the heart. It comes from above. It comes through that same gateway as divine communication. And it can be imparted as a special energy. But if there is no awareness of that energy and its unique potential, it will not be exploited. It will not be utilized. It will not be engaged with, and essentially becomes purposeless. This is a diminishment in our reach that has worsened over time to the extent that we are essentially heartless and totally selfish and self-serving beings. You see this displayed amply in the criminal element in your world. Those who prey on others because they have no conscience and can do so with no hesitation, no qualms, no inner fear or guilt of any kind, because they simply feel entitled. If they want something, they will take it. And they will use craft and cunning to cover their tracks, so they get away with it. They understand if it is opposed, they must counteract the safeguards. They must find a way to breach the defenses and penetrate the inner sanctum, much as a burglar in the night. As a powerful civilization with tremendous technological capability and prowess, we were early on able to run roughshod over other worlds who were living, to our way of thinking, a very primitive existence, existing off the land. and not engaging with technology in any fashion, we saw that as their being primitive and simplistic and vastly inferior to us. What we have failed to realize all of the time of our existence is that the purpose of the universe is a spiritual one, not a materialist one, to somehow see matter evolving into its potential greatness. That is an illusion and a misperception of reality. It is a scientific hypothesis we gave you to think about to misdirect you, because we know that things only come by the doing. If you wait for evolution, you will wait forever. It is too slow, it is too inefficient, and it is too disorganized because of the vast array of possibilities to ever create great intricacy. We understood there were organized elements in the universe and simply had to accept this and put our own interpretations on it, much as we have trained your scientists to think. But they are both faulty. The divine created everything in existence. That is why it has organization, information, content, purpose, and even an ability to reproduce itself. These are divine gifts. It is divine purpose on the march, seeing to what it needs and what it can do as an exploration designed to expand and grow capability. The fact we view things from a material perspective greatly diminishes our capability. Having evolved a technological capability to provide creature comforts, transportation, ready access to energy, and the wherewithal to be unfettered, gives us the luxury of time to explore new capabilities. But yet, because we are focused only on the physical, we are leaving out the primary purpose of existence and the very realms that are worth exploring, because they are much vaster in potential and of greater meaning in the first place. In this way, we have put blinders on ourselves, and this has been handed to you in the form of blinders that are worn by all in your world. You are following blindly the scientific community, which wears the blinders we gave them to limit their perspective of things. We corrupted your religions to introduce a poison pill to make you fear the Almighty God, when it is your best friend and originator. You are literally a part of God and its consciousness to begin with. to disavow the reality of existence of the deity, in essence, denies the reality of your own existence. But this nicely illustrates the dilemma we are speaking of. We are all in our cages. The troubled soul, spirit, trapped earthbound in a strange place and unable to exit, described in your question. Our civilization, blessed with great capabilities, intellect, and reason, settling for less. And then human, setting out on the same path to turn away from their own greatness, disavowing the value of the intuitive reach that connects them to the higher planes of existence, and an appreciation of spiritual values as the ultimate set of principles for conducting one's life. And in their stead, substituting materialism, personal enrichment, and power over others. Our civilization had a tremendous technological expansion. At the same time, it underwent a tremendous spiritual contraction. We are extremely limited beings as a consequence. A world without love is truly an empty world. There is nothing truly worth striving for in a loveless world. There is no one to share it with as a loving gesture. It is the ultimate trap and the ultimate cage. We chose to build the cage around ourselves and threw away the key and are helpless now. We need human help to ask the divine for blessings and rescue. The Anunnaki people cannot do this for themselves. They lack the ability to mount the very thoughts we are describing. To them, their world seems perfectly normal, and they are lulled into complacency by the ease of their lifestyle and the rewards through their technology of many amusements and the minimal amount of work needed in a practical sense to maintain their lifestyle. There is more to existence than simply existing. And this is the striking demarcation between the loving and the loveless world. No amount of technological trinkets can substitute for the value of love. The ideal existence for the beginning human culture was to live simply with no technology whatsoever, and work quite beautifully. until it began to be subjugated by the Anunnaki. We have much to answer for here and much to pay back. That will not happen unless you help us survive. If you do, there will be benefits to you in like measure and more.
Okay, thank you. Most humans prize and value their privacy, but we know from Creator that in an ultimate sense there's no true privacy. How much, if any, privacy did you enjoy or not enjoy in your life? And how was that rationed? Was it true that the upper classes enjoyed more privacy from the lower classes? Being telepathic beings, was it nevertheless quite forbidden for the lower classes to eavesdrop on the upper classes? Were there severe penalties for doing so? How was that policed? And was this something that took personal discipline to avoid, even unintentionally?